Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty chilling. It's a universally shared experience that completely blurs the line between a simple neurological glitch and something far darker. You know, the last thing most people remember before it all begins? They're simply staring at the ceiling.
Picture this. It's 3 in the morning. You wake up, your mind is fully conscious, but instantly you realize you absolutely cannot move. It's like your body has literally turned to stone. You try to breathe, but your lungs are just pulling air in these thin, shallow threads. You are entirely paralyzed. And here's the crazy part. This isn't just an isolated nightmare. It's a waking reality that has been reported by thousands upon thousands of people.
What really gets me is how horrifyingly specific the progression of this experience is. It always starts the exact same way. Step 1, the atmospheric pressure shifts. You feel this sudden, heavy pressure in the room. It's almost like the warmth has been completely sucked out, kind of like the feeling when someone you deeply trusted walks out the door for the last time. Then, step 2, complete physical paralysis sets in. You desperately try to scream, but your throat does absolutely nothing. And finally, step 3. Slowly, a dark shape appears in the room.
Now, what's truly unsettling is the sheer consistency of the figure that actually emerges from that darkness. We usually call it the entity. It's incredibly tall, we're talking sometimes taller than the door frame, and it stands perfectly, terrifyingly still. People describe it as being darker than a normal shadow. It's like a hole cut out of the dark, right? Like the idea of a man with the inside just completely removed. Oh, and it is always wearing a wide-brimmed hat. But perhaps the most chilling detail, it's not just passively looking at you, it is actively studying you.
And we're talking about tens of thousands of people across 6 different continents reporting this exact same entity. We're seeing accounts from the United States, the UK, Australia, Brazil, South Africa, Japan, Egypt, you name it. We have people of completely different ages, speaking different languages from totally different cultures, all describing the exact same hat and that exact same awful stillness. So this actually brings us to the work of researcher Heidi Hollis. Back in the early 2000s, she started collecting these accounts from totally unconnected people, and she noted that the hat was the absolute constant. It created this overwhelming sense of being evaluated by something ancient and completely without mercy. You see, other shadow figures people report seeing could be formless, or they move really fast. But the Hat Man, he is specific, he's deliberate, and he's identical across the entire globe. Okay. Let's take a breath and dive into the comforting scientific framework here. Neurologists actually have a very clear definition for this. They call it a hypnagogic hallucination. Basically, during REM sleep, your brain paralyzes your body so you don't physically act out your dreams, right? Makes sense? But sometimes you wake up before that paralysis actually ends. So neurologists argue that your panicked brain essentially glitches. It's your brain's rather unhelpful way of coping with anxiety by basically constructing a human shape out of the random shadows in your room.
So according to the science, the brain simply generates the hat. It's just a byproduct of our visual processing. The idea is that, hey, we've all seen old photographs, right? Or movies with mysterious figures standing in the fog wearing wide-brimmed hats. So our brain just pulls from this massive shared cultural database to fill in the blanks of that terrifying shadow in the corner. Honestly, it's a really neat, logical explanation.
But here is exactly where that comforting scientific explanation completely shatters. The science insists that this only occurs during REM sleep paralysis, that it has to happen in the dark, and that it relies heavily on prior cultural media exposure. But then we have the rule-breaking cases, and they happen when people are fully awake, in broad daylight, and most importantly, they involve young children who have had zero internet or media exposure. So the phenomenon is literally refusing to follow its own neurological rules. Just to put that into perspective, consider a case from rural Poland back in 1987. A woman described this exact figure to her priest way before the internet, or before this term was ever popularized. Or there's another pre-web case from rural Mississippi, where an 11-year-old boy actually drew the exact wide-brimmed figure the morning after his episode, again, with zero media exposure. I mean, these people had absolutely no way of knowing this specific cultural imagery, yet they independently described the exact same entity. Let's move on to a case that defies the sleep paralysis explanation entirely. We call this the 2019 Phoenix escalation. So, this happened on a completely ordinary afternoon. A mother was fully awake just walking down the hall when suddenly she felt frozen. But not in her body, in her mind. It was like a thought she just couldn't complete. This mental freeze only lasted for about 3 seconds, but meanwhile, her 4-year-old daughter was in the bedroom screaming for 45 seconds before the mother could even reach her.
And when the mother finally rushed into the room, her 4-year-old daughter, who by the way had never been exposed to any urban legends or scary internet stories, was pointing right at the bed. And she called the entity by its exact name. She called it the Tall Hat Man. I mean, there is simply no neurological or cultural reason a 4-year-old should know that highly specific name or describe that specific figure right in the middle of a sunny afternoon.
And that brings us to a deeply unsettling detail that so many experiencers report. It's this horrible pull of familiarity. For a lot of people, the absolute worst part isn't the raw terror of being paralyzed. It's that strange, quiet realization that they recognize the figure. One guy in Toronto reported that after his 3rd episode, his fear actually morphed into this weird feeling of being known. It feels like the figure has been waiting in that corner for a very, very long time.
Which brings us to our next major section, the Edinburgh Archive, predating the internet. Now we arrive at a historical twist that researchers genuinely cannot cleanly explain. Back in 2003, a researcher named Duncan McAllister was digging through the archives of a psychiatric facility just outside of Edinburgh, and he discovered a patient letter written all the way back in 1941 describing this exact entity. Then he found another highly detailed letter from 1947, and by 1959, a 12th isolated case was recorded at that very same facility. Keep in mind, this is decades and decades before online forums or global media ever existed.
The evidence buried in this archive is honestly staggering. We're looking at 12 different psychiatric patients. This facility had incredibly strict separation protocols, meaning these patients had absolutely zero contact with one another. On top of that, these files were never digitized, they were never published, and they were certainly never shared outside that archive. Yet, the descriptions of the tall, dark hat man just standing there watching them, they were nearly identical across all 12 of these totally isolated individuals. The implication here is pretty profound, isn't it? It means it was here before the internet taught us what to see. This completely dismantles the whole idea that our brains are just crowdsourcing a scary image from popular culture. It proves, without a doubt, that the phenomenon existed in identical, hyper-specific detail, decades before we had the media to supposedly plant the idea in our heads.
So, how does an episode actually end? Well, eventually, the paralysis lifts. You test your fingers, you wiggle your toes, you test your voice, your body finally returns to you. The room becomes just a normal room again. And then you just lie there in the returning warmth, and you actively decide that it was not real. You convince yourself it was merely a trick of the panicked brain, just a silly glitch in your sleep cycle.
But tonight, when you wake up and the room feels strangely wrong, when that dark, heavy pressure pushes against your chest, and you realize you literally cannot move your arms, you're going to have to ask yourself, is this just a random invention of your mind? Or is something ancient and merciless truly waiting in the corner? And if it is, does it already know your name? Thanks for exploring this explainer with me. Stay curious and keep questioning what you see.